Hello and welcome to Scary Town. I'm Nightmare Nemo, and this week we're going back to Horrorland to review Scream of the Haunted Mask. It's a nice good cover there. Pretty cool. The mask is back. So this one I was looking forward to a while because of, next month is October, Halloween and all that. So it was nice to revisit the Haunted Mask because it's brings up a lot of memories of watching the Goosebumps movie of the Haunted Mask, and it was just, it's iconic. Just as much as Monster Blood and Slappy the Dummy, Haunted Mask is up there for a lot of people. And so this one is, I believe, the third sequel to the Haunted Mask, and it has Carly Beth return again. And what is interesting to note is this basically retcons the Haunted Mask 2 because she's the same age she was from the first book, which is supposed to be like the second book is like a year after. And so yeah, it basically takes that away. I don't really remember whether or not the second book was any good or not, so I don't know if that was really necessary, but whatever. And so Carly Beth she's a changed person, after the first Haunted Mask. She started out as this kind of meek and very easily frightened girl who was like bullied by the other kids, and they would play tricks on her and scare her and stuff. And so she just lacked like confidence in herself. And when she put on the Haunted Mask, like it let loose this part of her that she was keeping down within herself. This kind of like this primal, like this aggressive force within her. And so she felt like this rush of being like, like instead of being the one that's scared, she's the one that's on the prowl and just like, raising hell. And it felt good for her to embrace that part of her. And so the experience made her, less scared of things in general, and more of a confident person who is able to conquer their fears. But from what is going on here, she wasn't able to get rid of the Haunted Mask. Like the Haunted Mask is in the basement, and it's tucked away in this box. You'd think after her experience with it, she would have like found some place to bury it in like in the woods or something. So she's still haunted by it. She has this dream where she goes into the basement, and she hears this sound, like this inhuman like wailing like this, and she goes to pick up the box and open it, and then the mask like screams at her and saying, it's getting close to Halloween, and soon we'll be one again. You're always my favorite. You're the only one that was able to resist the Haunted Mask. And so she realizes it wasn't a dream, and it kind of worries her. She's like, but she has school, and she has this part-time job at Tumble Down Farms, She and her friend Sabrina and this other girl Laura are taking care of these 8 nursery school kids, and they have their teacher Miss Lange, and a large part of the first half of the book is kind of just showing them at the job and taking care of the kids and stuff. And at one point, because it's getting close to Halloween, like the kids want a scary story. I believe it's Laura that comes up with this really scary story, and it was like a true story. Because nearby the farm there was this horse stable where many years ago the horses trampled against the wall, and this basically killed themselves out of fright, because there was this stable boy who put on this mask to scare one of the caretakers of the horses, and ended up scaring the horses instead, and the horses like trampled him to death, and then they slammed against the walls of the stable and basically killed themselves. And this is like a really dark story to tell these kids, and it's like saying, like, if you go to the stable you can hear the sounds of the horses like in panic and stuff. It's like, what? It's a little too dark. It sets up for what's going to happen later, because the aspect that Carly Beth takes away from it is as they say, the stable boy is wearing a Halloween mask, and it was very scary looking, and she immediately thinks of the haunted mask, saying like perhaps there's a connection between the two. And they mentioned that the stable boy's ghost still haunts the stable, and he's still looking for the mask. And so the presence of the haunted mask is getting stronger, and it's always in the back of the mind of Carly Beth, and it's to the point of it tears down her confidence and her preys on her insecurities, and some of the kids at school like play jokes on her, and even her little brother Noah like is able to kind of scare her. And so it's like history repeating itself. And so she goes out to the stable one night with Sabrina. Is like, she wants to investigate the stable and to see if there's maybe some kind of clue of what was going on. She knows there was a connection between the haunted mask and what had happened. And so she goes there, and then she brings like some carrots for like the horses, and she hears some sounds of like horses like ringing or whatever. And apparently like the whole visit was actually supposed to be like this big prank that Sabrina had set up with these other kids. But all the things that are happening, like, there's this ghost of a stable boy like coming towards them, and then she's like, this isn't what I planned to do. And she calls up her 2 friends, and they're like, they never made it to the stable, they're still at home. She's like, well, this is getting real, And so like they basically take off. As though they're running off to the bus stop to go back home, Carly Beth looks back to the stable and sees this boy, what could be the ghost of the stable boy, looking back at her. And so that's kind of it for that. And she's just like, the whole story was true. While they were investigating the stable, there was this mound dug up, like this small hole that was dug up for some reason, and just seemed kind of odd, but don't know why it was there. And so, still thinking about the stable and thinking that, maybe there's something there that they missed. And she goes off by herself to investigate, and she runs into this boy who looks a lot like the ghost of the stable boy, or what she thought was the ghost of the stable boy. Is actually this kid named Clark who works in the farm nearby. At this point, like, she's kind of like losing it, and she's thinking like, this guy like totally looks like the stable boy. There was this picture that Miss Lange had of them saying, this is what the stable boy looks like, and then he kind of looks very similar to him. So this is like she's like 100% positive, like this Clark is the ghost of the stable boy. And she like, what did the mask look like that you had put on and all this, and like, do you know about the haunted mask? And this just unloading all this information on him, and he's just like, he thinks it's all a gag, like she's just joking with him, and he doesn't know anything about it. It's written to make it look like he could be just like playing along, he is the ghost, but like he's just being aloof about the whole thing. And so, getting closer to Halloween, they set up this activity for the kids where they make these masks out of paper plates and paper bags. And it's like, Miss Lange is like, I want you to make the scariest masks, that kind of thing. And so they do so, and then they put them on and stuff. And then Clark comes by, and he has like this green mask. It's like in one of those cliffhangers. It's like, Clark appears with this green mask, and then like Carl Beth is like, oh my god, he has the haunted mask, like, he's freaking out. And then it's like, it's just an Incredible Hulk mask, and he like means no harm, and then her anger's towards him, thinking like, he's the cause of all this going on with the haunted mask and stuff, and he still doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. And then all the kids, like the mask that they put on, the paper bags or the paper plates or whatever, are like sinking into their skin, like tightening around their faces, making it really hard for them to breathe, and they're suffocating. And it's just, they're like crying out like, help me, get these masks off, but they can't take them off. Like Sabrina's like trying to take the mask off, but they can't. And then it turns out like it's Laura. Laura's like, like floating above the air, and her hair is just like whipping back and forth, and it was all me. It was her the whole entire time. It turns out she is the ghost of the one that was in charge of taking care of the horses, and the stable boy was trying to scare her, and she wanted revenge. And so she's got like this power. She's making it so that the masks are around the kids are like suffocating them. And it's basically like she's like yelling at this point, like, it's like, Carly Beth, like, bring me the haunted mask. And as it turns out, Carly Beth is actually missing the haunted mask. Like, she went back to try to find it, and it's completely missing. And in its place is like this chicken costume that her parents bought for her. And so they're like, like, hey, I have no idea where the mask is. I wish I could help you. It's like, and she's like, Laura's just insisting, like, you know where it is. You're lying. And then Sabrina kind of pulls her aside, saying like, Carly Beth, I'm sorry. I meant for this to, I had good intentions. And she admits that she had taken the mask from her house, and she was going to bury it in that hole next to the stable. She says that's basically where it is. She buried it. And it's like, and then she tells Laura like, hey, we know where the haunted mask is. Just you know, don't do anything crazy with the kids. Just we'll be back as soon as we can. So and then Clark joins them, and they go off to the stable. They don't even use a shovel. They just like dig up the hole, just because the dirt's pretty fresh, and so it's not that hard. And they grab the mask, go back to the school, and it's like holding the mask, and then it's like Sabrina's, like, don't give it to her, and then Cogda's like, you're right, like, she probably wants to use the power of the mask to make herself like invincible, augment her powers. And then she's like, like, it would be a mistake to give her to the mask, like, how can we trust her, And so it's like, well, we're pretty much powerless against her. She's this ghost with, I guess, magical powers or whatever. And so she's like, well, pulls the haunted mask over her face, and then it starts immediately changing her behavior, and she's all like screaming or like rah and stuff, and then just like kind of throwing stuff and whatever, and then like kind of snarls at Laura, saying like, hey, it's like, you were gonna use the mask for evil and make herself more powerful. And then Laura's like, I didn't want to put on the mask, like, that's crazy, like, I wanted to destroy the mask because it seems like the mask is the only thing that could really harm her. And it's kind of like there's this kind of power struggle, and they attack each other, but it doesn't seem to really get them anywhere. It makes Carly Beth more powerful, but it's still a ghost, I guess. I don't really understand Laura being the ghost. That's the twist, and it's kind of stupid. Like, it works. It like totally threw me off. Like, it's like, what? I was totally behind the whole Clark is the stable boy, he's the ghost, and it's just like, what? Laura being a ghost just comes out of nowhere. Like, why would a ghost, obviously planning to get the haunted mask and destroy it, like, why is she working at the nursery with them? Is this, doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, she's solid when she's working with them, but then all of a sudden, like, she's like transparent and like, ghost form. Like, I guess she could turn it on and off at will. Like, I don't know. It's you think too much about it, it just kind of falls apart. And so they're not getting anywhere with, Carly Beth's more powerful, but you can't really touch her. They move the fight outside, and then you hear like these, like the sounds of horses like moving around, and they come out of the night sky, and they circle around Laura, forming like kind of this ghost tornado, and then they just take off in the night sky, and Laura's just disappeared with them or whatever, and just not sure what's going on there. So I guess the ghost like helped them out for whatever reason, and now they're dealt with the dilemma of Carly Beth has the haunted mask on her face, and she can't take it off, and she's getting more and more violent, just, lunging at her friends and stuff, and they're like, Clark and Sabrina are like, we're trying to help you. He's like, I don't need any help and stuff. And so the horses come back, and they stop, and the ghost of Laura is, you can hear her voice saying, thanks, Carly Beth, you're the only one that showed any love and appreciation for the horses by bringing them the carrots. And the carrots are symbolic of love and affection towards the horses. And so the magic of the ghost horses, they swarm around her, just like they did with Laura, and then she's able to pull the mask off. Earlier in the book, Carly Beth went back to the shop that's where she originally got the mask, and she goes to the shopkeeper and saying like, hey, you need to take this mask back, I don't want it. She's afraid it's gonna find its way back onto her, and saying like, I can't take it back, it took me so long to get rid of it, and that kind of thing, and saying like, just warning her, using a symbol of love can only be used once to remove the mask. And so she's worried, and so I guess apparently this is another way to remove the mask, the power of the ghost horses. And Laura, you just kind of have to just run with it. Like, sure, why not? And so that's kind of it for Scream of the Haunted Mask. It leads into the Horrorland where Sabrina and Carly Beth are just kind of walking around Horrorland and having a good time, and they go to this, like those old big movie theaters, and they go in and there's this magic show like Mondo the Magical, and he's like this kind of old-timey magician with a top hat and a cane and stuff like that, and he's doing all these really lame, cliched, pull a rabbit out of the hat and pulls this endless scarf out of his mouth and stuff, and all the while Sabrina is making remarks like, hey Carly Beth, this is how he did that trick, and then somehow Mondo is able to, he singles her out and hears her, and always remarks saying oh, here's a trick you won't be able to figure out, and it just so happens they're sitting right next to Billy and Matt, who they got a lead because they think Byron's somewhere in the theater. There's these guards next to the stage, and they want to go backstage and see if maybe Byron's back there, and they're talking about what's going on, they still want to know what was going on with the girls that are on the carousel, and the horses are on fire and stuff, and Sheena has disappeared, and we gotta find what's going on. And so all the while this is going on, Carly Beth and Sabrina are listening in, oh, this is kind of crazy. And then Sabrina's these guys are kind of hot. And then Carly Beth's yeah, Matt's pretty hot, whatever. And then they kind of start a conversation saying hey, you guys seem pretty stressed out for some reason. And they tell him, hey, we're trying to find this guy, and something's going on here. That they asked them, where you got free invitations to Horrorland. You're in the same spot as us. You're in danger as well. We all had scary stuff happen to us before we got here. Matt talks about the monster blood, and Billy's talking about the pirates, and then Carly Beth kind of just lies and says there's nothing sinister happened to me before I got here. I'm just here to have fun. And it's kind of messed up. You think after everything, she would be more confident and more trusting, but I guess that's not the case. And so they're the next trick that Mondo is doing is, he has this tall box that's as tall as him, and he has his assistant, who's this attractive lady, who goes into the box and he closes it, and then he puts this long cloth over it and says magic words and whatever, and then removes the cloth, and then the box opens and reveals it's Sheena instead of the apprentice. They're they're kind of shocked. It's whoa, it was, Billy runs and is oh, Sheena, and then they all go to a stage, and then Mondo's is like, I don't know what's going on. And so, they question. She knows, like, hey, what happened to you? What did you see? And she said, I saw the carousel. It was on fire, but it wasn't burning the girls, so they were safe. And so with this knowledge, they go backstage to Mondo's dressing room to see if there's any like clues or whatever, and they find this picture with Byron's name tag on it, and the ride's called the Wheel of Fire. And we need to find this ride, so they get out of the theater, and they find one of those signs saying like this is a map of like where the rides are, and they're like naming a few of them, like the Doom Slide. It's like, oh yeah, they name drop Doom Slide. And so they can't find the name of the ride anywhere. It's got to be there. It could be like a discontinued ride or something, right? They kind of take off, and Carly Beth is kind of stunned because she's looking off to the side, and there's that mask shop where she's like, she swears she sees the haunted mask, and then it ends with that cliffhanger, and then she reveals like, oh, it looked like the haunted mask, but it's not. And they go inside the store, and the shopkeeper knows them by name. It's like, hey, Carly Beth and Sabrina, you want to try any of the masks? And then they look up and they see masks that look just like the girls in the carousel that they had seen. And it's like, oh, this is weird. Oh, that looks like your friends. That's an odd coincidence, And then it kind of mouths to them, like, it looks like their mouths are moving, saying like, you're next. And they're like, yeah, this spooked out, and just like they take out of the store. And then they lose the boys. Let's go back to the Stagger Inn and see if maybe they went back there and can regroup with them. And they go back, and they're not there, and so like, let's go somewhere else to kind of kill time. And they go to the Werewolf Village in the woods, and they kind of get lost, and it's getting kind of dark. They stumble upon this clearing where these cages of these men were like really hairy, and there's like their clothes are all like torn up, and they're like kind of frothing at the mouth. And when they get closer to the cage, they're like raw, like they're like feral. And then it doesn't take a genius to figure out these guys are gonna turn into werewolves. And so they move off down the path, and they're like trying to find the exit, and they find like this gate, but it's locked. And it's like, hey, we can see a way out. And it's like, so they're like, they move along the gate, saying like, if we move next to the gate, eventually we'll find like another way out. And they don't, and it ends with something hungry and that like howls at them, like jumps out at them, and it ends there. And so my thoughts on Scream of the Haunted Mask, it's an interesting story. I just found that Laura being like the ghost was kind of a bit of a stretch, but it's a cool twist because you don't see it coming. So you're so focused on Clark, who's like this red herring, and it is comforting to revisit the character of Carly Beth, and it's nostalgic. And the Horrorland stuff is just so much fun to see all these characters like interacting and stuff, and getting closer and closer to figuring out what's going on. The whole mystery of some greater evil is plotting something with all the kids that are getting these free invitations and stuff. And then the whole carousel on fire is... I'm still not sure what's going on with that. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the friendship of Carly Beth and Sabrina. It is very organic, and is just this nostalgia of the Haunted Mask. It's a lot of fun, and definitely getting me into the spirit of Halloween. Alright, so that's it. for this week. Next week we're going back to the classic Goosebumps and reviewing Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. I don't think I've ever read that one when I was a kid, so it's going to be a new experience for me. And so, we'll see what happens there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And check out my Let's Play series, part 1 of Until Dawn. And I'll see you guys next week. Alright. Bye.